So thank you very much for being here on a sunny, in where I live, it's very sunny afternoon in June, the 1st of June 2020. And my name's Graham Frost. I'm very pleased to be here. And what I'd like to do is just take you through some of my story, which is kind of based around heart-shaped decisions. So to start off with, a few months after my 17th birthday, I found myself walking down the road from my parents' house with my belongings in about 6 carrier bags. My parents were both walking along behind me, and I turned around to look at them, and they were both in tears. I'd never seen my dad cry before, and I didn't see my mother after that for 27 years. That's 27 years I went without seeing my mum. And that was as a result of the first heart-shaped decision that I'm conscious of making. Now, those of you who don't know this, I know one or two of you know a bit about the story, but for those of you who don't know, what could actually make you do that at the age of 17? Well, I was brought up in a fundamentalist Christian cult. There's no other word to describe it. And I was thinking about this earlier today, and I thought, what really defines the way I was brought up? And I think one of the things that came to mind, I went for a walk this morning around the lake near where I live, and I do a lot of thinking there. And I thought to myself, do you know what? Every time I loved something as a child, when I was growing up as a young child, as a teenager, every time I loved something, I couldn't have it. It was taken away from me. And I can remember we weren't allowed to have radio, television. The list of books we were allowed to read was very, very limited. And I can remember one instance when I was about 9 years old, and there was a young girl who lived on our street just round the corner. And she used to go to the same school as me. And so we used to walk to school together, and we became friends. And I suppose in a way at 9 years old, I loved her. And she could possibly have been my first girlfriend, although we didn't even hold hands or anything like that. And she said to me one day, she said, Graham, she said, would you like to come round to our house for tea one night? My mum's asked me to ask you. And I knew straight away that if I said to my parents I wanted to go to Stephanie's house for tea, I wouldn't be allowed to, because she wasn't part of our church, and we weren't supposed to eat with people that weren't part of our church. But I went home and asked anyway, and my dad just looked at me and he said, you know what the answer to that is, we can't eat with people that are not in our church. So somebody that I could have been friends with, even loved, was taken away from me. And that was one of the first times. After that, I started thinking to myself, is this really what I want? Is this really what I want for my life? That I can't have people and things in my life that I love. Although I probably wouldn't have put it like that. I started to rebel. I started to question. And then when I was 12 years old, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Woolworths, but I know Woolworths in Australia is something different. You still have Woolworths in Australia, because I was in Australia, we have a lady from Australia here, and you still have Woolworths there, and it's different to what it was here. But Woolworths was like a convenience store, and there was one in practically every town and city in Britain. And I've given this talk to live audiences where I've asked people to put their hands up and say, how many of you ever, when you were growing up as children, actually stole something from Woolworths? And quite a few people have put their hands up and said, yes, I did. And it was almost like a rite of passage here in Britain for people to do things like that. So yes, I found myself with a friend from school that I wasn't supposed to have, in Woolworths at the age of about 11 and a half, 12, stealing some pick and mix or whatever it was from from Woolworths. And unfortunately for me, I was arrested by the store detective in the store, and the police were called. And to cut a long story short, I was taken to court and put on probation. And you know, it probably wouldn't happen today. If you're caught shoplifting at that age, you'd probably get a slap on the wrist, or you know, maybe social services might be informed or something like that. But I don't think at the age of 12 now you'd be put on probation for shoplifting. But I might be wrong, I don't know. But anyway, that happened. And my friends were pretty much restricted to being my family. And I had 5 male cousins who lived in the same town where we grew up. And I was almost like their honorary 6th brother, because I used to go around and play with them a lot. And you know, I had a good time around there. And all of a sudden, my aunt and uncle said to them, "We don't think you really ought to be associating with Graham anymore because he's a bad influence." And this is supposed to be in a church where you would think there would be some love, wouldn't you? And you know, at that point in time, I can't remember anybody, possibly apart from my grandparents, who actually showed me any love at that point in time. Everybody kind of withdrew away from me. Oh, you know, he's a bad influence. You don't want to be around him. And that was the time when I began, you know, when the heart-shaped decision began to take shape in me, to say, you know what, I'm not really sure this is for me. I'm not sure this whole, you know, this whole church thing, this particular church, this whole lifestyle, because I was expected to grow up and get married quite young and have a big family and you know, stick to the teachings of the church. And I thought, probably, you know, I'm not sure this is what I want for myself. So that was when I started to question even more at the age of 12. So it took me from the age of 12 to the age of 17 to actually make the decision to leave. So, you know, I wonder what decisions you've made in your lives, you know, that have taken a long time to make. And I know some of the people, I know some of you, you know, quite well. And I'm thinking, yeah, most people have made big decisions in their lives, have changed direction hugely. And, you know, I've done it throughout my life. If I've been in a place where I didn't feel right here in the heart, it didn't feel right, then I've moved on, you know. And even as recently as last year, I've moved 90 miles to be with somebody that I love. You know, so it's never too late. It's never too late to actually make that change. You might think, oh, I can't do that. You know, I'm set in my ways. You know, I have made that decision. I'm actually loving where I am now. I'm looking out the window, greenery. It's fantastic. You know, I mean, it's been really been the right decision for me. But anyway, so I walked down the road from my parents' house at the age of 17. Got onto a train, and I went away to the other side of London. I went to work in a bar, and in those days they had if you worked in a bar in major cities, a lot of them had accommodation. So I got a job and somewhere to live. I was 17. I wasn't even old enough to drink in a pub, and there I was working behind the bar. Kind of crazy, you know. You probably wouldn't be able to do that now. But this was in 1973. Yeah, I'm quite old, you know. So, yes. So what happened next? Well, that was when, not very long after that, I have a thing, the heart-shaped decision. I also have a thing called a stupid gland, which I think it lives in my head. I don't know where your stupid gland lives, but mine lives in my head. And every so often, the stupid gland takes over, and it doesn't let the heart do what the heart wants to do. And so I fell into the trap of listening to somebody who I probably shouldn't have listened to. In fact, I definitely shouldn't have listened to this person. And So one night, you know, I was thinking about this recently. We were working behind the bar on a Tuesday night, and this guy said to me, Joe, he said, I think we're actually being taken advantage of here. He said, they've gone out and left us in charge. Why don't we just take all the money out of the till and go and do so and find some. And I thought, you know, well, that sounds exciting. And so we did. We actually took £300 out of the till, which was quite a lot of money. This was 1974. Quite a lot of money. You know, £300 was quite a lot of money in 1974. And we took that money, we packed our belongings, we travelled off, and we got a train into London, and we booked into a hotel, and we had no intention of paying for it. In those days, you could walk into a hotel in London, you could ask for a room. We got a twin room, there was no payment requested. You actually just went to the desk and you paid when you left. But that seems incredible now, but that was what we did. And again, to try and cut a long story short a little bit, within a few days of that, my new Svengali mentor, if you like, had persuaded me that it would be a good idea to rob some of the other hotel rooms in the hotel where we were still staying. And so I crawled along a windowsill four floors up, opened the sash window of the room about 4 doors down, went into that room, went through the person who was staying there's luggage until I found their traveller's checks, and then I stole their traveller's checks. And then I sat up all night practicing the signature on those traveller's checks so that I could go and cash them at the bank the next day. My mentor, Svengali, just kept watch and watched me. I did all the work and took all the risks, while he enjoyed the fruits of my labours. I would then give him the money, and he would give me some pocket money. So, can you see what I mean when I say the stupid clan took over? After some months of this carry on, you know, it was quite exciting. I'm not going to say it wasn't exciting, but in my heart, I knew that I thought, you know, I haven't left my whole family behind to go and actually do, to be pursuing this. By this time, we got arrested. Again, I'm conscious of time. I can't speak for forever. It would take me a whole day to tell you the whole story. And I realised that I needed to get away from that. But not before. You know, we got arrested 2 or 3 times, to be honest. I even stole a car once, so I can't drive. I couldn't drive at the time. I stole a car. I was trying to drive this old car, and I couldn't. I hadn't even told my colleague that I couldn't drive. He said, "You drive it." He was sitting in the passenger seat. I'm trying to drive the car. I'd never driven a car. Talk about stupid, you know. So what? I bet you've all done some pretty stupid things. We all do, don't we? You know, that probably ranks with the most stupid things I've ever done. So, you know, anyway, to cut a long story short, again, I finished up going to a young offenders institution. At the age of 19, I was in a young offenders institution, and they were called Borstals in the UK at the time, and they don't have Borstals anymore. Now they just have Young Offenders Institution. So I was in Young Offenders Institution, and I still hadn't learnt my lesson, because while I was in there, I was knocking around with a guy who was a bit of a ruffian. That was a word they used to use in the 1970s, a ruffian. I don't know if you've heard it. You don't hear it these days. And he was a rough lad from the East End of London, and I had gravitated towards him because I thought he would protect me from any other people, and so I was his little sidekick. Now, when you were in Borstal, as it was called, you were sentenced for 6 months to 2 years, and if you were really well behaved, you got out after 6 months. If you messed around and didn't do what you were supposed to do, you could do the whole 2-year sentence. So after a year, I was still there. I had a personal officer who I had like a one-to-one with every so often. And one day, his name was Mr. Taylor, and we used to call him Tinker Taylor. I can still remember this man. He had a big influence on me. He sat me down one day and he said to me, he said, "Frosty, what are you still doing here?" He said, "You're not a criminal. Why are you still here?" He said, "We get lads that come in here," he said, "by the time they get to us, we know there's nothing we can do for them." He said, "You're not like that." He said, "You've got something about you." He said, "What I want you to do," he said, "I want you to go back to your dormitory." Yes, we used to sleep in dormitories, 20 of us to a dormitory. "Go back to your dormitory and decide what you want to do with your life. Because I don't want to see you back here." And I thank him for that conversation. I'm sure somebody at some time in your life maybe sat you down, had a conversation with you, and changed the direction of your life. Or perhaps that has yet to happen, I don't know. But that certainly changed the direction of my life. And I remember going back to the dormitory and sitting on my bed and thinking to myself, "Do you know what? He's right. I don't need to come. This is it for me." And from that day, I kept my nose clean, as they used to say, and minded my own business, got on with my work. And 2 months later, I was given a release date because I had started to, I'd started to use my heart instead of my head more. And the stupid gland was a thing of the past for the time being. Although I'm not going to say I'll get through the rest of my life without making any mistakes, because I didn't, and I'm sure I won't. So anyway, I came out of the Young Offenders Institution, and again, there's a big gap in the story. And things went pretty well. After a while, I met somebody. I actually met somebody that I was allowed to love. Well, that was something different. And we got together and we were living together. And I had a job on the railway where I actually ended up working for 24 years. And things were going great. And then all of a sudden I started to feel ill, I started to feel sick, I was tired. And eventually I was taken to my partner decided, she insisted that I went to the hospital with her. And I was diagnosed with testicular cancer at the age of 22. So I am the only professional speaker who has escaped from a cult, been in the Young Offenders Institution, and had testicular cancer all before I was 25. And as you can see, I recovered. And I'm absolutely convinced that part of the reason why I recovered from cancer is because I decided that it wasn't going to beat me. Now, people have criticised me, saying people have said to me, "You can't say that positive thinking can cure you of cancer." I said, "I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that it's part of the ingredients." I made a heart-shaped decision at the moment I was told that I had cancer, that cancer is not going to get me. And I'm sure that played a part in my recovery. And I'm still here to tell the tale. So, I think for me, heart-shaped decisions have continued to play a part in my life. As I got older, I married some. The stupid gland took over. I married the wrong person in my late 30s. In my 30s, I married the wrong person. I made a heart-shaped decision to escape from that marriage. In 1996, somebody said to me, "Would you like to go into a job in training and development?" And I said, "Does that mean I've got to get up and speak in front of people?" And they said, "Well, yes, it does." I said, "Well, I'm not sure I can do that." And they said, "We can give you that skill. What we can't do is duplicate your experience that we want you to pass on to other people." I made the heart-shaped decision to take that job, and I would not be sitting here today speaking to you if I hadn't done that, because that was where I learned that was where I found my voice, and I could share my story, and it would help other people. So I just like to finish my bit, just by asking you to think about maybe a heart-shaped decision that you might need to make right now. There could be a heart-shaped decision, a big decision that you are wrestling with, and make it make it, you know, make it, don't make it quickly necessarily, but make it, might be something that's gnawing away at you, you know, particularly with, in the situation we find ourselves in here in June 2020 with the coronavirus crisis. You know, it's made a lot of us, change the direction of our lives. It's made me think, it's made me actually really, it's made me focus 100% on sharing my message, which is why I'm speaking here today, because you know, I have this message that I need to share with people, that you need to use your heart in your decisions. You know, you need to put your heart into what you do, whatever it be in your personal life and your business life. Are you doing what what your heart tells you you really should be doing? So what I was planning to do at this point was open the session up to a few questions. So I was gonna ask you to put questions in the chat. I'm feeling a little bit more I'm feeling a bit daring now. So if it has anybody, first of all, has anybody got a question they'd like to ask me? You know, connected with what I've just been speaking about. Does anyone like to go first with the question? Any? You can unmute yourself. Mark, Pam first. Yep. We'll have Pam first, please. If we can have Pam. Thank you, Pam.
Hi, I'm using a different microphone headphone set. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, hear you perfectly.
Just wanted to check that. Brilliant. I wanted to ask, you know, when you were in Borstal and Mr. Taylor, Tinker Taylor, said to you, you're not like those other lads, did you immediately know what he was saying, or did you feel yourself to be kind of delinquent, for want of a better word? Did you think you were a bad lad, or did you kind of have this you know, this sense of wanting to be a hard man kind of thing? What was your reaction when he said it in that instant?
That's a really good question, actually. I actually knew he was right. I knew that I wasn't like, I suppose I knew that I wasn't like anybody else. I wasn't like the other people in there. I'd never made any really close friends in there. And I never kept in touch. Funnily enough, I never kept in touch with anybody that I met in there at all. I mean, we didn't have Facebook or anything in those days, so it was a real effort to keep in touch with people. But and I've never actually looked up the people I went there with. So no, I didn't feel as if I was a criminal. No, I didn't feel that I had much in common. In fact, when I look back to my days in Borstal, I didn't really have much to do with I didn't have any long conversations with people there or anything like that. Just this one guy, and I think he probably used me as much as I used him in some ways. But that's a really, really good question. No, I did feel that I wasn't a criminal. I think before I got to Borstal, they put me in Wormwood Scrubs. Wormwood Scrubs is a really nasty, horrible prison in West London where they put hardened criminals. And I was in Wormwood Scrubs for a month, being assessed. And to be quite honest with you, they could have let me out of there, and I would never have offended again. Because that was in the days of slopping out, when you had, it was really not very nice at all. You had your porridge you had your porridge for breakfast. It really was like that. It was like, if anybody watched the television series Porridge in the 80s and 90s, that was really what it was like in Wormwood Scrubs. It was pretty basic, yeah, wasn't nice at all. Does that answer your question, Pam?
Absolutely, and more besides. And I was thinking, sometimes somebody would say to young people in those kinds of situations, hey, there's another life. And that, if that's done in the right way, it can be inspirational, and that young person can start to believe that there's a chance to do things differently. Yes. They've got to make a leap of faith. And so I was curious whether you kind of made a leap because he'd said it, or actually what he was able to do was point something out to you that was already there, but that you weren't acting upon. And I think that kind of talks to your subject of heart-shaped yes. decisions, that sometimes what you're doing with people, as you would as a coach, if you were coaching somebody in this, that you would point something out that they kind of knew but weren't looking at. And I think that's a really powerful thing.
Yes, yeah, I think that's what I think. He spoke to my heart, whereas probably everybody else that was speaking to me around about that time was speaking to my head. He spoke to my heart. He made me, you know, it was something deeper. I think when somebody speaks to your heart, it's something deeper. There's something deeper there. Thank you, Pam. Mark, you had a question?
Yes, thanks, Graham. I wanted to ask, do you think the heart-shaped decisions are always the best decisions?
I think in my certainly in my opinion, in my life, when I look back on all the decisions I've made that I would say I've made with the heart, they've all been the right decision for me. I can't speak for somebody else. I can't speak for somebody else's life. For me, the major decision. So leaving home, that was definitely the right decision. Although it was it certainly wasn't easy. I mean, you can't imagine what it's like to walk away from your whole family at the age of 17. But I don't regret it. And then many years later, my dad rang me up and said, "Would you like to come and see us?" And it was an instant heart-shaped decision to go back, to go and see them. That wasn't. It was very much made with the heart and quite instantly. But most of the heart-shaped decisions I've made have taken quite a while. I mean, the longest one was the 5 years it took me to actually decide to leave home. Because you can't leave home at 12, can you? Well, I suppose people do, but so I don't know. I think I'm not conscious of ever having made a heart-shaped decision that I've regretted. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I guess it's prompted by the comment about the woman that you met, and I remember you saying that you'd made a heart-shaped decision to move away from that relationship.
Yes.
But would it not have been a heart-shaped decision to get into it?
Well, I've thought about that because I was expecting to get that question one day, and no one's asked it before. And I thought to myself, because you would expect, wouldn't you, that if you decide to marry somebody, that would be a heart-shaped decision. But I don't think it was, because actually, if I'm really honest with you, on the day of the wedding, and even a few days before, I was thinking to myself, this is not the right thing to be doing. My heart was telling me not to do it, but I was so far down I don't know, a lot of people have said that they've been so far down the road of, the wedding's all been organised, they're already living together, all this, that and the other, that they can't get out of it. And so I can remember the day of my wedding very clearly. And I remember being outdoors at the venue where the reception was, and it was like I was in a film of somebody else's life. And I thought, is this really happening to me? What am I doing? This isn't really where I want to be. But I stayed in it, and I stayed in that position for another 5 years. So it probably took me from the day I got married for another 5 years to actually make that decision to leave. When I think about it, I never really considered it like that before. But it was a crazy. I mean, but there again, I don't regret having made that decision to get married, because even though I had 5 years that weren't very nice most of the time, that got me involved in going for some counselling, which then helped, which I probably wouldn't have done if I hadn't been in that situation. I had some counselling, which actually helped me to understand all the stuff that went on in my early life. So I wouldn't be where I think life's a journey, and sometimes you have to make some mistakes to learn. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Graham.
Good. Okay. Monica, you were asking if you could ask a question, and yes, you can, is the answer to that.
Well, jolly good. Hi, this is Monica.
Hi.
Nice to see you in person.
And yes, I think we're on Rob's WhatsApp group, aren't we? Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm very happy to put a face behind the name.
And likewise. Yeah. Thanks.
So my question to you, I mean, I think we've got a lot of things in common, and I am somebody who is who's always been a little bit rebellious within limits.
Okay.
I've never been in prison or anything like that, but I am somebody who is prepared to put up a fight if I think that something is not right. Now,
Yes.
what I'm seeing with my 14-year-old daughter is that she is very politically correct, and then she goes like, "Oh, mommy, don't do this. Oh, mommy, don't do that. Mommy, don't do the other." And I said, like, is it just me who thinks that the younger generation, I mean, they want to have it all the easy way, but they're not prepared to take any risk? And what could I tell her that is not coming from me, but is actually coming from you, as to say, hey, this is your age to be rebellious and challenge the status quo.
Yeah, so you want me to give you something to tell your 14-year-old daughter?
Yes, yeah, so something that is not coming directly from me, something that I can tell her, it's coming out of somebody who's been there.
Okay, so I think, you know, I'm not a 14-year-old girl, but I've never been a 14-year-old girl. So it's I think you have. Oh, she's there. Goodness me. Hello. I think you have to. As a 14-year-old, I was never encouraged to be myself. I was never encouraged to have dreams, or, you know, it was always, this is what you're going to do. I was always told what to do. And you know, when I was 14 or 15, I wanted to be, believe it or not, I wanted to be an advertising copywriter. And my dad said, well, you can't do that because it's just not practical. Because my dad was a very practical person. And so I would say, even at the age of 14, you need to have something that you're actually aiming for, and you need to put some effort into that. And I've been working with some working with some young people and sending videos to young people. And I said to them, you know, young people these days are sort of in lockdown, and they're not with their friends, you know, so form some groups and see how you can sort of help each other, to almost like, I don't know if you've heard of mastermind groups, but I'm in a mastermind group, and there's nothing wrong with, you know, get a group of young people together and see if they can help each other to actually encourage each other to achieve something. Maybe something creative. I don't know. Is your daughter creative? Does she like making things or creating something or writing or making?
She is very creative, but I think that she is so much, I would say, in the mainstream. And I've said to her, like, look, I am in the comfy position that I can support you with every decision, career-wise or whatever, that you take. But it's you who has to take that decision. And I'm seeing that she's too much focusing on what is the right thing to do, rather than saying what is the right thing for me to do.
I think so. I think she needs to tell us, yeah, what if she could do anything? If she could do anything, what would it be?
I think she's very clear on one thing, which I love her for. She wants to do something where she can help either human beings and or animals. So she's a very compassionate person. And then I said, well, look for something that goes along those lines, and whatever it is.
Yeah, that's absolutely. There's always going to be a need for people that do that. I mean, you know, this even during lockdown. I mean, funnily enough, there's a veterinary surgery just around the corner from where I live, and there's always people there, even now. So something like that maybe. But you know,
the thing is, I mean, here I've seen the police. They had like a gathering of three, her and two friends, and the police, they were really abusing their let's say authority, to say like, oh yeah, and now we're going to fine you, and she was so scared and did not want to put up a fight. And I said, well, no, that's not right. You have to recognize when it is time to put up a fight.
Right. Yeah. And I think the other thing I would say to her, don't be too serious at the age of 14. Don't be too, because make time to have some fun. Make time to have some fun.
Absolutely. And then when she
Well,
asked me, am I allowed again? I said, yes, out you go.
Yeah, I was. When I look back, I was never really encouraged to have fun when I was a child. It was all for me. It was all about going to. Thanks, Linda. It's for me. It was all about. Being a good member of the church, and we used to have to go to church 5 times on a Sunday and every night of the week. You didn't have time to have fun, So I would say if I had my childhood over again, I would make time to have some fun and have spend special time, create memories with your friends as well as being focused on what you're going to do with your life. Make time to have some fun and do within the law, do crazy things. Do something. Because I never got encouraged to do that. I mean, one little story I'll share with you actually was just popped into my head I was about 15 and a half or 16, and there were lots of things we weren't supposed to do. There was we weren't supposed to go to sporting events, and so we lived in London by this time, and I remember I cycled from Clapton in East London all the way from to Crystal Palace, which is probably, I don't know, about 10 miles. I cycled over there and I watched motorcycle. They used to have a motorcycle racing track at Crystal Palace. I watched the motorcycle racing. And then when I got back to my bike, which was in a bike shed, it had a puncture. And I didn't have a puncture repair kit. So I rang my dad and I said, can you come and pick me up? And he said, no, you're not. He said, I'm not coming to pick you up because you weren't supposed to be there. So your punishment for that, your punishment for that is to have to push your bike home. And I was 15 or 16. Before I left school, I was still at school. So yeah. I was 15 and a half probably, and I had to push my bike 10 miles home, and then I got absolutely no, when I got home, I just got told off, and there was no kind of, it was all about rules.
Well, I mean, most probably I would have reacted the same way, but I would have not told you off when you got home.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying he should have come and got me, but he could have showed me a bit of love. When I broke, yes, I've only ever broken one bone in my body, okay, and it was my wrist, and the church we belonged to, they just decided, this was when I was even younger, about 11. They said we weren't supposed to go shopping on a Saturday, right? So I had been shopping on a Saturday. I'd been to a shop on a Saturday. I was riding my bike home and I fell off my bike and broke my wrist on the curb. And luckily I was just around the corner from the hospital. And I walked into the hospital and I said to the person on reception, I said, I think I've broken my wrist. And apologies to anybody that's a bit squeamish, but the bone was actually poking through my wrist. So, and the lady said, yes, I think you have. And so she, and so what happened was that they had to actually go to somebody had to go to my parents' house and collect them, collect my dad, because we didn't have a phone. We didn't have a house phone in those days. This was in 1960. We didn't have a phone until we moved to London in 1968. And so they had to go and get my dad. And my dad came and he said, what were you doing out on your bike? He said, that is judgment on you for going shopping on a Saturday. And there was literally, and I had to get up the next morning and go to church like nothing had happened. And I was in pain all night. And that was the kind of thing I was escaping from. So I think,
yeah, that's too harsh. I agree. Yeah.
I think, fun was not, I used to escape into books, actually. I mean, I got my love of reading. I still have a love of reading. My partner bought me a Kindle for Christmas last year. And I've been downloading lots of books because you don't have to go out to a shop to buy them. So you can download as many books as you want while the coronavirus thing is on. So so I'm just conscious of time. But I think it's just. Have we got any more questions before I can't? Yeah, Rob, what was it? Rob, you got to.
Hi, Graham. Quick wave to Monica. Lovely to see Monica online. My question is, and I wonder if this might help Monica and Lara as well. I know you're trying to sell these talks to people. So
Yes.
what have been the benefits of making heart-shaped decisions for you? Because I think a lot of people are looking for within, what's in it for me?
Okay. So yes, that's a very good question. And so the benefits of making heart-shaped decisions for me have been that I've had an interesting and varied life where I've constantly been learning. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that it's been a life of amazing financial riches or anything like that, but it's been a rich life in other ways. And I've made the decision to travel. I've made the decision to meet interesting people. I mean, like yourself, we met through Toastmasters, and joining Toastmasters, for example, was, looking back on it, that was a heart-shaped decision because, certainly I joined it, and then I thought, after about 3 months of going to Toastmasters, I thought this is something I want to get involved with, and I'd actually stayed there for 14 years. That's how much of a heart-shaped decision it was, and I wouldn't be sitting here doing this. Because if I hadn't joined Toastmasters and learned how to speak in public, that's another heart-shaped decision. It was a heart-shaped decision to leave Toastmasters because I thought, no, I need to move on more into the world of professional speaking, so I can share my message with more people. And that's what I'm trying to do now, speaking to young people in schools, young offenders, even people in business, because I think businesses would benefit hugely from making decisions more with the heart than the head. In terms of how they look after their people. I know that when I've been looked after as an employee, it's been a long time since I was an employee, but I know that the best work that I ever did in my employed career was in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I was valued and inspired by the people, by the people I was working for at the time, and that for me, that's the benefit. You've worked, I know, Rob, yourself, you've worked in learning development for a long time. I know Pam has. I know Mark. In fact, we're all in the same kind of area of work, and it's about for me. The reason I do this is to help other people to get the best out of themselves and the other people in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question? Is that kind of I think really I'm if I suppose sometimes I can be too much led by my heart. Luckily, I've got a partner, a life partner now, who's very analytical, and she'll say, and she's probably the as she says, she's the yin to my yang, because she although we've got a lot in common, she will actually say, sometimes she'll sort of pull me back and say, have you really thought that through? And so I need, and I know you're more analytical, so I need friends around you.
Mm.
I think you need friends around you that you listen to that say, yeah, okay, well, that's a really good idea, but have you thought of this? And that's where I'm in an excellent mastermind group at the minute with Mark and a few other people, and so you get lots of different perspectives on things before you make a decision. Because I've been used to making decisions on my own for a long time, and it's really good to involve other people, and also for me to be involved in helping other people to make their decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Good, good.
Yeah, I wondered if that explaining the benefits to Lara for Monica would help her daughter take a few more risks. I don't know. I always enjoy telling people about travel and
Yes,
world
oh,
travel
absolutely.
and the benefits of doing that, and to sell it to them, because I had learned such a lot through that experience.
Yes.
So yeah.
Well, I know when because Rob was actually on my Heart Shaped Decisions podcast a couple of weeks ago, and Rob's actually got an amazing story of his own, because he was in the middle of he had a really good career with a company in his sort of mid-20s. He was about to be promoted to being a store manager, and him and one of his friends decided to just take a year off and go traveling around the world. And you actually never went back to that career, did you, Rob?
Yeah, that was a good decision, although the logical decision was to follow the
Yes.
career.
Yeah.
However, I was starting to feel unhappy with that, and the values that the organisation I work for in retail weren't the values I held in how they treated other people within the business.
Yes.
So yeah,
I
it's a
can
good
fully
decision
relate to that, Rob. Yeah, I can fully relate to that, because that's why I quit my previous job. So well, and I quit without having a parachute. So I did not have a job lined up at that time. And I had Lara, who was not even a year old, and I said, like, yeah, but I don't feel happy. And if I don't feel happy, I cannot convey happiness to anybody else.
Okay, thanks, Monica. Pam, you had another question.
I've got loads of questions, but I think we can take that offline another time.
Yeah, we can do that, definitely.
I just wanted to mention the book that I've put into the chat, which is for Monica and Lara, because it relates to something you just said, Monica, and I'm so glad I put that book, because I wasn't sure whether it was the right book, but what you've just said has just nailed it for me, which is when you said that you took that decision without a parachute and you just went for it, and your daughter does the opposite. And the book I've mentioned, Quiet by Susan Cain, it talks about how we can be very different even from our own children. And so whilst we might be a risk taker and see the benefit of that, that's not necessarily right for people that we care about. It's about a balance, and maybe she could be more of a risk taker and see the benefit of that. But in that book, it was really fascinating because she talks about the difference between introvert and extrovert, and she talks about the difference in sensitivity. And when you said that your daughter's very much caring for animals, caring for people, she's very, very sensitive in that way. And it may be for her that the anxiety of moving to where you are would cause her so much anxiety, it's just not worth it. But it might be a book that helps her to work out, how does she manage to feel more safe in the world? How does she manage her own sensitivity? So rather than it being a complete book review, I'm going to stop there, but I just wanted to explain why I put that book in there, because I think you've got so many superpowers, she's got superpowers, but they're different ones. So it's how you meet together to say, how do we balance that? So thanks, I just wanted to share
Thank
that.
you,
Well,
Pam, very
super,
much.
thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's actually interesting. That's just triggered something in me, because I was, me and my dad, I mean, I actually, I actually see my dad now. I'm in contact with him, although he's still in the church. And he and I are polar opposites. He's a man who's always worked with his hands and makes things and creates things, and he would take cars to pieces and put them back together for the fun of it. And I'm completely the opposite to that. I just about know how to put fuel in my car and pump the tyres up. Anything else, it goes to the garage. And my dad can't. My dad said to me about my dad's got dementia now. He doesn't remember things. Every time I go to see him, he says to me, "What are you doing for a living now?" And I tell him, I say, I do training and speaking. And he said, "What do you mean by that?" So I tell him, and he said, "People pay you for that." He doesn't get it at all. He does not get it that you can actually be paid for speaking and training and not actually doing anything with your hands. when it comes to doing stuff with my hands, I'm useless. You know, I mean, I've been living in my house for nearly 6 months and I haven't finished decorating yet. You know, so because I'm too busy doing this stuff. But this is what floats my boat. You know, helping other people. So I'm a bit like your daughter, maybe, in that helping other people, and is what actually floats my boat. You know, if I can, you know, I can think of a couple of people who I've actually helped with their career, and they've actually had a goal, and I've actually given them a plan, and they've actually got to where they wanted to get to, and that gives me massive satisfaction to do that kind of thing. Yeah, thanks for the comments, folks, and I will be sending out a questionnaire to everybody that was here today to, you know, just to see what I could do, what's been good about it, and what's been what I could improve. Because this is the first time I've ever done anything like this. It's very different to standing in front of a large audience. Very different indeed. So just to round it up, unless anyone's got any more questions or any more contributions. So in 2001, I got a phone call from my dad to say, after many years of silence, I got a phone call from my dad to say, would you like to come and see us? And I went to see my mum and dad, and from that day,
Can you hear us?
It's
But we
not just
can't
me.
hear you.
We lost Graham.
He's back.
Yes, there he is. He's
Okay.
back. Right.
I've gone. Right.
Yeah,
Let's
you got
just
to the
suspect
point where you
Graham.
said from that day to this, and then you froze.
Oh,
so
okay.
we haven't.
It's just telling me my internet is unstable. Sorry, but yeah. So I had a phone call from my dad to say, you know, go and see them. So I kept in touch, and then my partner said to me, "Why don't you?" My partner said to me, "Why don't you go and see your mum and dad before Christmas? I think you need to go. You should go before Christmas." This was Christmas 2017. So I went on the 5th of December, 2017. Went to see my parents. My mum was very, very poorly, and my dad said to me, "I don't think we're going to have your mum for much longer." And then she did actually pass away 5 days later. So I made that heart-shaped decision to go and see my mum, based on advice from my partner, and it was yes, it was you know, that was the right decision to make, and I was able, you know, I never thought I would see my mother again, and I left 27 years without seeing her. I never thought I would see her again, much less attend her funeral and actually have a good relationship with her, a reasonably good relationship with her in the last days of her life. So it just goes to show, you know, heart-shaped decisions can take you in all sorts of directions, but I promise you, if you make heart-shaped decisions, you will never have a boring life.
And you will never regret anything.
Well, I won't say I'll never regret it, but even the mistakes I've made, I've learned from them.
No, because I mean, I had a very similar experience with my father, because I mean, we have not, maybe not the same as yours. We can take that offline another time, and I hope we get to meet in person at some point. But I had exactly the same. So when my father turned 70, he decided to plonk himself over here from the Canaries to Switzerland, where I live. So you can claim towards your auditorium or whatever, like you have an international audience here. And I was first very hesitant, because I thought, like, oh, it's going to mean a lot of work for me. It's going to do the Piepner thing, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But I said, like, okay, it's turning 70, and thank goodness I did, because not even 2 months later, he had an ictus and he ended up in a home.
Okay, Monica, can we take this conversation offline sometime?
Sure.
Because I'm conscious of the time, everybody else's time. So thank you so much for bringing that to us, and thank you everybody for being here today. And I look forward to seeing you and hearing and keeping in touch. And Deanne, thank you for being here from Australia. Everyone, thank you for your contributions. And yes, if you want to keep in touch with me, most of you are connected on LinkedIn. I've got a Facebook group called Graham Frost's Heart-Shaped Decisions, and I've also got a podcast called Graham Frost's Heart-Shaped Decisions. In fact, if you Google Graham Frost's Heart-Shaped Decisions, you'll find everything to do with it just there in one place. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate you all being here. and look forward to speaking again soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Really enjoyed that, Graham.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was
Thanks,
fabulous. Thank
everybody.
you.
It's been
Brilliant.
great.
Nice to meet
Thank
you all.
Thank you. Take care.
Nice to
now.
meet you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Graham.
Bye.
Really good.
Bye. Bye.
Good to meet everyone.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Rob. Take care. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Oops, you and me.
Oh, there we are. Thank you
That
so
was-
much for coming.
Oh, it was excellent. Really enjoyed it, Graham, and very nicely done. I loved it how you saved a little story at the end to bring it all back together. That was nice.
Yeah, yeah,
Nicely
thank you.
done.
Well, what sometimes happens is when I do the live talk, people, you know, in the past, people have said, what happened to your relationship with your parents? So I kind of, in fact, somebody once said to me, if you're doing a, let me just stop the recording a minute.
Oh, good idea.